The U.S. housing market is starting to slow down to the point where we haven't seen since 2006, guys. Things are really starting to change out there, and including my format of the video today. As you can see, I'm outside in Miami's insane heat today. It's not even quite summer yet, and already feels like 103 degrees out here. It's absolutely crazy. Anyways, I'm gonna try to stay in the shade as much as I can for this video. Now, the biggest problem that we're seeing is affordability. Now, it's no surprise that, homes are at record high prices, but these interest rates that are creeping up are really crushing demand to buy homes right now, and the demand is literally falling by the week due to these interest rates going up by the week. And if we keep going at this pace, there's a good chance that in a few more months from now, demand could be almost zilch. But I did see an article today that says that a lot of landlords are literally getting ready for home prices to come down. Specifically, they're getting ready to buy these new construction homes that aren't quite finished yet, because these builders are basically not able to complete these homes, and you have these big institutional landlords basically on standby with all of their money in the world, ready to just come in and buy those properties the moment that the builders cry for help. Now, as you guys can see, one of the biggest trends we're noticing right now with the changing housing market is who's buying these homes. Now, we already know that institutional investors have really gotten in on the game over the past few years because of things like REITs and Wall Street getting in on the landlord game. But one thing we haven't really seen before are these mass purchases that these institutional landlords are doing right now that are literally causing huge constraints on the housing market. So you take somebody like one of these builders, okay, that is literally running out of money, or they just don't have the supplies or the resources to finish their homes, or if they do, then they just can't sell them fast enough. So what do? They turn to these big institutional investors who will just come in, pay cash for all of their properties, obviously at a discount, buy them in bulk, buy the entire neighborhood, the entire development, whatever it is, and that's it. Now you have another big company that owns another 300, 500 houses, whatever it is, and renting them out to the American people. So I personally think this is a big problem, and it's just not fair, guys. Now, I know life is not fair, and things like this are going to happen regardless of whatever I say about it on YouTube or regardless of what anybody else says. But the thing is, if this keeps happening, then the supply of homes is going to continue to be in a shortage because of these institutional investors. The question is, when the recession comes, are these guys going to be hit hard enough to where not even they'll be able to buy these homes anymore? Because you got to remember, a lot of these institutional investors, they don't go and get a 30-year mortgage like you or I do. They use short-term debt, usually at an adjustable rate that probably needs to be paid back within just a few years. So if these interest rates keep going up, and these guys are using a massive amount of debt as well to buy these big swaths of homes, then we might see some karma in action. Because what I think could possibly happen is, all right, you'll have these institutional investors come in, buy these unfinished construction projects, these big neighborhoods. Oh, look at us, we're big time landlords now. And then what? Well, now your debt payment just doubled because your interest rate just went up by 2 or 3% basically overnight. And what are they going to do? They're going to have to turn around and sell those homes in order to make those debt payments, because they literally will not be able to make the cash flow from these rentals. And we also know that a lot of these investment companies, they're sitting on homes, right? You guys know this. You guys know that a lot of times they'll buy these homes and they can sit empty for months before they're ever leased, and sometimes they might not be leased at all. And this is a big problem. So we could see a big reversal very soon when these institutional investors basically run out of money, because that's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to run out of money and they're going to turn around and try to unload as many of these properties as they can before it's too late, before the market drops even further. Because obviously we're already seeing price cuts, we're already seeing the market shifting right now. Even some very wealthy people that I know are selling some of their properties because they don't want to be the ones left holding the bag. Now, obviously in the long term, real estate is a great investment, but if you paid a couple $1,000,000 less for a property just a few years ago and you can get a couple million more for it now, then sure, why not take those gains? Because when you're in that echelon of people and you have this kind of money to throw around, you got to be guaranteed that there's going to be some deals come up when the recession does come. And I'm a firm believer of that, guys. I saw it happen the last recession. I saw how many deals there were out there. They were everywhere. We had homes at 50% off. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be 50% off this time, but who knows, right? The important thing is to be prepared. And the only way that you can really be prepared for that type of downturn is if you have some cash on the side, ready to go. Because the thing is, it's going to be tough to get credit when interest rates are up, because the government has already said they're going to stop buying mortgages very soon. And as most of you may or may not know, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae are the biggest mortgage purchasers in the entire country. When you go and get your mortgage, the bank will then turn around and sell that mortgage they just generated for you and turn around and sell it to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae 90% of the time. And they've already announced they're going to stop buying those mortgages because now they're going to be going through a phase called quantitative tightening instead of quantitative easing. So quantitative easing was when they were printing all this money, giving out all these loans, these PPP loans and the EIDL loans and the unemployment money, all these trillions of dollars that they printed. Well, now that inflation is completely out of control, they have to do something. And what are they going to do? They need to start taking some of that money back. They need to start reducing the amount of money out there in circulation. That's quantitative tightening. And they do this through various different ways. And one of them is through the fact that they're going to be raising interest rates, and they're also going to be stopping buying your mortgage. So, in a few months from now, we could be seeing a situation where the only way you can really get a mortgage is maybe through your local credit union or your local bank. Because, if you look at big banks like Bank of America and Wells Fargo or whoever else, they're probably not going to be writing so many loans because they can't turn around and sell them to the government anymore. So we could be going back to days where you see banks taking a chance on people because they know you, because your credit is good, and you have a solid relationship with that bank already. It could be a situation where lending becomes scarce, essentially. And if you are able to get a loan, your rate's going to be much higher than it would have been just a few months ago. And, I don't really know who's buying right now. I guess there are certain situations, like I've seen some of you guys tell me in the comments that you live in an area where rents are still higher than purchasing a home, which there are still areas like that. And sure, if you can find a home right now, in June 2022, that's cheaper to buy than it is to rent that similar home, then yeah, go for it if you're planning on hanging onto that house for at least a decade or longer, For many people right now, that's not the case. So you really need to be careful, because if you're buying at today's prices and today's interest rates, you could end up being the biggest sucker of all when the table really turns, guys. And you don't really want to be the one left holding the bag. Now, everybody's going to do what they want to do. Everybody has their own opinions on how things are going to work out when it comes to the market and, when it's a good time to buy. You know, you have people out there saying that it's never a bad time to buy real estate. You always have to take into account that you just never know what's going to happen in life as far as, you know, when you might need to move, when you might need to sell. Maybe you'll lose your job, because that's another thing that I haven't even talked about yet. That right now, consumer sentiment is at its lowest level we've seen in many years. So basically what that means is that people are becoming more and more fearful right now of just how high inflation is going to continue to go. People are scared that they might get laid off from their job, especially when the recession hits, because we saw that last time around when there was a recession. There was a ton of people that lost their jobs, and when people lose their jobs, they can't afford their biggest expense in life, which is usually housing. And that's going to be the first thing that people stop paying for, because you can go 6 months to a year before you're actually kicked out of your home and lose the place in foreclosure, and you can save any little type of money you can by not paying, and you're giving food to your family instead versus paying your mortgage. So we're going to see things like that start to happen again if we go through a major recession. Now, we don't really know if it's going to be a major recession or not, right? That's the big question right now that nobody knows. But all these signs aren't pointing to anything good happening anytime soon. You know, if you think that the federal government's going to come in and rescue everybody this time around once again and be the ultimate savior, they're not, okay? Because they can't go back to just printing money again. Things are different this time. During the last crash, they could bail out the big banks with printing all this money. But guess what? They already blew it, guys. They already printed all the money. They can't print anymore without severely putting our currency in jeopardy to the point where it's absolutely worthless. So they have no choice now but to be doing this quantitative tightening pretty much at all costs. At the cost of the stock market going down, at the cost of the real estate market going down, as well as people losing their jobs, because inflation has to be their number one goal right now. And I said I was going to stay in the shade, and there's some trees here on the side of the street, but they're not providing a whole lot of shade. I guess I didn't pick the greatest time of year to come start shooting some videos outside again. The thing is, when it's summer, it stays light out later, so it's easier to be out here and get some things done a little bit later. I think maybe the next video I might have to do closer to sunset, so that way I can get a little bit of relief from the heat and not just getting blasted out here. But I wanted to get this one done today because I'm headed to the beach after this. Haven't been to the beach in like 2 weeks, guys. And I live right on the beach. Now take a look at this property, for example, guys. You can see this house probably needs a complete renovation, right? But I'll bet you this house sold for, you know, well over $1 million, especially in this golf course neighborhood over here. And it's a complete fixer-upper. You know, you can see this place is basically trashed. We can't see the inside, obviously, but you can tell just based on the deferred maintenance on the outside that this place hasn't been kept up in years. You know, if you're buying something like this right now, you need to be getting a severe discount, okay? You know, if the houses around here are normally 1.5, 1.6 million, you shouldn't be paying more than $1 million for a house like this, because that gives you enough room to actually fix it up and still have some equity when it's all over with. But these high interest rate payments are just going to be killing you right now. Another interesting article I saw earlier was from the Wall Street Journal, saying how there's actually still a bunch of cities out there in the US right now that actually have not hit their 2007 housing market peak prices yet in 2022, which I find interesting because this does ring a huge bell when it comes to looking back to 2008, because I remember when the market crashed back then and the recovery started happening. You know, some areas made really big recoveries really fast compared to other areas. And as we can see, housing isn't created equal everywhere, guys, because if there's areas out there that haven't even fully recovered since the last crash, and we get another housing market crash in the near future, I mean, just think about it. Those places might never see values again that were near the 2007, 2008 prices for another 10, 20 years. That's possible. This is why it's important to know your local market and know those numbers. If you are a potential buyer out there, you need to know these things, okay? You need to know, are the prices higher than they were in 2008? Are they lower? How much higher are they? Because that shows you a lot of different things. It shows you speculation and it shows demand, because I just read today that, out of the 10 highest rent hike cities in all of the United States, 8 of those 10 cities are right here in Florida, guys. And why is that? Because we've also had 25% of all the homes sold here in the past couple of years been bought up by investors. Florida in particular, where I live, is probably in a much bigger bubble than other areas, say like in the Midwest, for example. And we've just seen so much speculative buying here in the past couple of years. And that's very noticeable by just looking at how much the rents have gone up here. Because most of the time, mom and pop landlords aren't going to turn around and double your rent overnight. I mean, I'm a landlord. I would not do that to my tenants, because one of the most valuable things you can have as a landlord is a tenant that takes care of your property and pays on time and doesn't give you a big hassle each month when it comes to repairs or all these little problems. Somebody who's self-sufficient enough to take care of little things that they're supposed to according to the lease and not be bothering the landlord with every little inconvenience that comes up in the property. So to me, as a landlord, that's invaluable. And it's definitely not worth losing a tenant like that over a rent hike. Now, sure, is it okay to increase the rent by a fair amount each year? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was a renter for many years and my rent went up almost every year, but at a reasonable rate. It went up $50 one year, $100 one year, small increases that people can absorb and figure out a way to pay for, because especially when you're younger, usually you're coming up in the world and you find new sources of income and your high earning years are still in front of you. So hopefully when you're renting to somebody, in their 20s or their 30s, then they're going to be able to continue to pay those rent increases. And I think it's just awful what's happening out there when you look at, these big institutional landlords buying up like these mobile home parks and even pricing folks out of those things. I mean, mobile homes are one of the last tiers of affordability when it comes to housing in this country. And if the day comes when people can't even afford to live in those, guys, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. So we need to be paying attention to all these things. And obviously I am, and you are too if you're watching this video right now. And I just think it's important to discuss these things, because obviously the mainstream media isn't talking too much about this. And especially when it comes to the housing market, you see, people out there saying that it's not going to be like 2008, prices are not going to come down because the supply is too low. And then you have news outlets saying that there's some economists claiming that, the housing market is going to crash. Nobody knows. But what we can do is we can use our own best judgment and our gut, and just also pay attention to what happened last time to try to gauge what might happen and just how bad it might be. Or maybe it won't be so bad at all. But the only way to know that is by just watching your local markets, paying attention to what's happening in the stock market, which is down. It's funny because everybody thinks that, this is just all gonna last forever. And we saw a little bit of a rally the past couple of weeks when stock prices hit, record lows for the year. And guess what? They're all back down again, guys. So this is just a big game. People are in there trying to just make every last buck that they can before the party is completely over. That's what I think is happening right now. The stock market's always been a pretty big game, if you ask me. But it's really starting to show right now just how big of a game it really is. And chances are, if you're in that game, you're not winning right now. So this is when I'm happy that I don't have any money in stocks. And you know what? If my property values go down, I don't care. You know why? Because I'm not planning on selling these properties anytime soon. So it makes no difference to me if, you know, the value of my properties go down. So I'm not worried about that. But I am worried about people out there that are potentially getting these horrible loans, especially these adjustable rate mortgages right now, because I think that most people just are not equipped to have these type of loans. And when we still see areas that people are overpaying for homes and there's still bidding wars in certain spots of the country and getting these types of loans, this is bad news. Somebody's moving out. Check this out, guys. These super old luggage suitcases right here. Haven't seen luggages that old in many years. Samsonite on top of that. Still got an old Miami airport sticker on there. They're building a brand new house across the street. Looks like the lot's been completely leveled. They're tearing out everything that needs to be out of there right now in order to build another brand new home. And I'm seeing activity slow down here too, guys. You know, being in Miami, it's pretty common to have homes here that are grossly overpriced. We have a lot of sellers here that are just out there fishing, looking to see if they can just get top dollar for their properties, and they may not even have an intention to actually sell those properties, but they'll list them for sale anyhow. Maybe even a place like this, you can see everything's completely brand new here, and most likely a flip, probably what that other house is going to be pretty soon. And they'll try, you know, they'll try to get top dollar, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, because Miami is one of those places where we just have so much foreign investment. You know, if you guys want to learn more about how much foreign investment we have, then check out this video I did a week or two ago, just highlighting how many foreign investors we have here in Miami. It's crazy. And many of them turn these properties into rentals. And we're seeing that now in Florida. Like, for example, even in the building that I live in, I see units now renting for $4,000 a month, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, that just a year or two ago were renting for $2,700, $2,800. So while that's not quite a double of an increase, it's still a massive increase that can easily price you out of your home. I know a couple of my neighbors that are literally desperate to find a new spot in the building before their lease is up because they got nowhere to go. We're talking tenants that have lived here for 10, 15 years in the same apartment, and you know, their landlord sold it to one of these big investors, and now their rent is up, you know, 50, 80%. So what are people like that going to do? I don't know. I really don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think everybody's going to do. I do hear that there's a big movement of people starting to move in together, you know, families starting to band together, and you know, just have more and more people live under one roof just to make it affordable. But even that's not sustainable, because at some point, say you got 6 people with a job under one roof and half of them lose their job in the recession, and the rent goes up for that home, and at the same time inflation is still on the rise, making everything more expensive. I mean, even in a situation like that is going to make times tight for people. So even that, it's only going to take you so far. I think it's a good idea for now, but that's not really addressing the real problem that we have in this country, which is, you know, the housing affordability crisis. So we're going to keep paying attention to what's happening out there, and we're going to keep commenting on it. We're going to keep having discussions in the comments section, because not everybody out there agrees with me, and I'm fine with that. I think it's good to have intelligent discussions back and forth. You know, I'm not somebody that wants to tear someone apart because we don't have the same beliefs or the same ideas of what might happen out there. So I am open to discussions with everybody out there, but I just don't want to have an argument with you in the comments, you know? So people that do that, I just stop answering you, and that's that, because I don't have the patience or the time to be getting into, you know, petty arguments over what may or may not happen. But I think it's good for all of us to share our opinions. Now, if you actually stuck with me this long, then obviously you really enjoyed watching my video, and I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and check out my next video on the screen right over here, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.